You're listening to the North Parkway Podcast, weekly talks designed to help you take the next step in your spiritual journey. You can learn more about our church at northparkway.org. And if these talks are helpful to you, consider using the link in the description to give. Your financial support helps us continue to make great content. All right, well, that's enough intro. Let's get to today's talk. If God really is good, why isn't the world happier? Why isn't the world as a whole, as an average, a happier place? Because you would think if he's all-powerful and he's actually good, like we say that he is, that making humans happy should be pretty high up on the God to-do list. All right, fix everything wrong and create a new species and check, make everybody happy. If he's actually good, shouldn't we be happier? Shouldn't he want us to be happier? Because Marshmallow wants us to be happier. Shouldn't God? Most of you guys just, I wish he would be happier. Okay, just know your crowd, Chris. He said, okay, if you want to take Jesus at his word, officially he says that part of the reason that he came is to make life better for people, to make life happier. One of the most famous statements that Jesus ever made is recorded by one of his followers. John chapter 10, verse 10, Jesus said, I came to the world, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I came to the world to give people a better life. But the reality is, if you're bogged down with rules and stuff that you're not supposed to touch, and places you're not supposed to go, and things that you're not allowed to think or feel or do, it feels like a more accurate word would be, I came that they may have rules and have them excessively. Sometimes that doesn't feel like happiness. It doesn't feel intuitively like happiness, because how many of you guys, it just thrills your heart to see all of the rules when you open up a book or you start a class or you go to do your taxes. We have to hire professionals just to manage all of the technicality. I like a little bit of freedom, and ultimately what I want is what you want. I just want to live life and be happy. I don't have to be the richest person. I don't have to be the most successful, but I do want to be happy. And we're starting a series of talks about how to find that, how to get that, and how to have it last consistently. If you're in a pursuit of happiness and you want some say in the matter, I have good news and bad news for you today. And it's actually the same phrase. So this is something you'll want to write down in your notes. If you've got fill-in-the-blank notes, or if you're at home, get something to write down. The good news and the bad news about happiness is you're in charge. You are in charge of your destiny. You get to call the shots, ultimately. And at face value, that is good news, because being in charge is fun. How many of you guys have ever been in charge of something? Nobody? Nobody's ever? Oh, yeah, there you are. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be the boss. It's fun to call the shots. It's fun to be able to say, no, we're not doing it that way. Kind of reminds me of that freedom that comes when you got your first car. Anybody remember the first car that you ever had? Somebody who really loved your first car, shout it out. What was the name? What was the model? Cavalier? Honda Civic. What else? What? Somebody else. 87 Mustang GT. Ooh, yeah. You remember the feeling of freedom when you got your first car? Okay? Whether it's a Mustang GT or whether it's just a regular old, my first vehicle was a Chevy S10 pickup. And there was nothing special about that, but I made it special because it was mine. I could do anything I wanted with it. So I got seat covers and vinyl graphics. You're not supposed to be able to fit a subwoofer in a single cab pickup truck, but my dad and I found a way. And we got it right in there, right? Tricked out the sound system. Right? It's fun. The first house that you owned or your first place when you moved out, it's special. If you haven't moved out yet, the first time that you get your own smartphone and you don't have to borrow mom's to try to play games, right? There's something fun about being in charge. But it's not all fun. There is a downside to it, and the downside is this. Whoever's responsible, you can write this down in your notes, whoever's responsible for choosing things is responsible for changing things. If you're in charge, you get to call the shots. But when I said earlier, when I said it's fun to be in charge, but there's a two-sided deal, anyone in here who's ever been the boss or who owns your own business or who has ever been like the principal of a school, anyone who's ever been in upper management, you all felt this when I said this. It's fun to be in charge. You're like, yeah, but it is fun as long as everything's going well. But if something breaks and you're in charge, you have to fix it. It's your job. Okay? If you don't believe me, ask any Karen who to talk to if something is broken. Okay? And if your name is Karen, I'm sorry for what society has done to you, right? But put that back up on the screen, Kate. Okay? Anytime that something is broken, I used to work in retail, nobody ever comes and says, I demand to talk to an average middle of the pack employee. I demand to talk to a cashier. But they don't do that. When Karen comes in and goes into Karen mode, who do they ask to see? The manager. Why? Because the manager is the one who has to fix stuff if something goes wrong. Whoever's in charge, whoever is responsible for choosing things is responsible for changing things. And that becomes stressful when you are in charge. So I remember when I finally moved out of the house, and I became the man of the house. Actually, there were 3 men of the house. It was 3 college guys that all went in together to get an apartment. And I had this experience a couple months after moving out onto my own. I had one of those toilet clogs that the plunger it laughs at the face of the plunger. You ever have one of those? It's Easter Sunday. We're talking about clogged toilets. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm talking about like, it's closed even for liquid donations, right? There's nothing going through that. And I tried, and I tried, and I tried. And I did everything that I knew how to do to fix the problem. And I realized when I had exhausted all of my options, I realized a powerful dynamic in life. Every time up until that point, when something went wrong in my life, when something was broken, and I didn't know how to fix it, I would just go call Dad. It's Dad's problem. He owns the toilet. Dad, I can't unclog the toilet. And then he would get frustrated and cranky, but somehow he would find a way. It wasn't my problem. But when I got my own house, now it's my problem, right? Any of you young men who want to grow up and be the man of the house, just know when you are, they're going to come to you, and you're responsible for fixing it. And it's very stressful when you have something in your life that you're responsible for fixing and you don't know how. Now, I did know how to fix the problem. Call a plumber, right? Easy. Duh, Chris. The problem was, I was a broke college student. I didn't have money to call the plumber. So it was me. And legitimately, the 3 of us guys, there was a gas station down the street. And for like 3 days, if you needed to pee, you just have to go to the gas station. Finally, unbelievably, enough plunging, it did work. But it's stressful. It's stressful. Whoever is responsible for choosing things is responsible for changing things. So that's the trade-off. I want to be in charge. I want to have a say in what I do. I want to have a say in the direction of my life. But the more that I'm in charge, the more that I'm responsible for. And it's something that I want to be in charge, I want to call the shots, probably is part of human nature to the very core. But I don't think any country in the world represents that better than America. Okay? We are the land of the free. We love freedom. We love being able to chart our own path and not having a whole lot of oversight. And so I thought this week, as I was preparing this, I thought, man, we do things our own way here a lot. How's that working out for us as a nation? How is being in charge working out for us so far? Let me read you some statistics, and I'll let you draw your own conclusions. On average, in America, there are 26,000 murders every year. 26,000 people are murdered. About half of them are husbands or wives or ex-husbands or wives. And some of you guys are like, makes sense. Yeah, that's... But 26,000 people, though. Imagine how bad that is. 78% of Americans have no cash savings and are living in the stress of paycheck to paycheck. Some of you guys know just what that's like. 1 in 3 women in our country will be physically abused at some point in their lives. 1 out of every 4 girls and 1 out of every 5 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18. There are approximately 17,000 reported cases of sex trafficking in our country. And those are only the ones that are reported. And here's the result of that. The result is that we as humans, we as Americans, become really depressed because the world is a mess. There's this weird growing trend among young people today of saying, I'm not sure if I want to have children because I see the state of the world. I don't think I want to bring a human being into this. 29% of Americans, okay, this is the wealthiest, one of the most prosperous nations on the planet. 29% of Americans will have at least 1 season of clinical depression in their lifetime. 18% of our country are depressed right now. And 20% of high schoolers in America the last year seriously considered suicide. How is that working out for being in charge? How is that working out for us? I would say, not well. Not really well. As it turns out, we like to call the shots, we like to be in charge, but us figuring out what's best for us does not produce lasting happiness. It produces murders and abuse and depression and Packers fans, right? It's about 7 million of them in this country. So, you can see right there how bad. Just kidding. But the reality is we can't produce, we can't generate lasting happiness. It's here for a moment and it's gone. And worse than that, more importantly than that, we can't produce a ticket to heaven. We can't earn our way. We can't do enough good to offset the bad in our society or in our own hearts. We can't give enough to the poor. We can't help enough grannies across the street. We can't let our sibling have the last waffle enough to make up for all of the bad. Because whether you like it or not, whether you believe in him or not, when you die, we all have to stand before God and give an account for our lives. And being either welcomed in or turned away is going to depend on whether you meet God's standard. Well, here's what God has to say about his standard. Romans 3:23. Everyone has sinned, and we all fall short of God's glorious standard. Right? Just like I didn't know how to unclog the toilet, none of us can fix our souls. None of us can fix the brokenness, the not good enoughness inside of us. And the thing about being in charge, you can write this down, is that your rules come with your rewards.
Check.
Your rules come with your rewards. You earn what it is that you work for. And sometimes you earn good things. I don't want you to get the wrong idea like I'm trashing on America. I love my country. I love the fact that if I work hard, I earn a paycheck and I can build assets and I can have a nice house and I can gradually accumulate these things and I can do it hopefully without going into debt. I love earning good things. But I can't do enough to earn my way into God's favor. And here's what he said about my rules and where that gets me. Romans 6:23 says, the wages of sin is death. My rules, my rewards, and the best that I can do is being cut off from God forever. Okay? That's not something that's appealing to me. That's not good news on Easter. That does not fill my heart with cheer that doesn't seem like it belongs in a talk about happiness. And that brings us to today's life hack. See, this series that we're starting today, and we're going to go from now until Mother's Day, is looking for happiness in unexpected places. In places where it doesn't seem to belong, where you would never expect it. And there's an unexpected place that we find happiness, and it's found in not ultimately being the one in charge. So you write this down. Happiness is found in surrender. Happiness is found when we dig out the white flag and we say, okay, I give up. I can't fix this. Dad, help. I can't unclog the toilet. I can't fix what's broken in society. I can't even make myself happy. And I can't make you happy enough with my life to let me be close to you. Happiness is found in surrender. See, God puts it this way. Romans chapter 10, verse 9, he says, if you declare with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and I know Lord is like a churchy religious term. Let me expand that, because it didn't start that way. Ultimately, a Lord is like, you just imagine Old English, like lords and ladies, right? The Lord is like the boss, the manager, the one who ultimately owns the estate that you're living on. The imagery that God gives humanity is that we are sort of like estate managers, and we have a lot of flexibility to live our lives however seems best to us. But there are moments and there are times when we realize ultimately He's in charge, it's His stuff, and He has some best practices for what we do with His stuff. And so the pathway to happiness from the God who created the species is connecting with Him as the boss, as the manager. The Bible says if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and you believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. And that's the only way that you can make up the difference between your best and God's expectations. That's the only way that you can connect with the God who made you. Otherwise, you're locked out in this life and when you die. And the good news is when He's in charge, when it's His rules come with His rewards. And the most important one, the first one, the one that we celebrate on Easter, is that when I make Him Lord, when I call out to God for forgiveness, He forgives and He makes up the difference between my best and His standards. We read earlier the first half of this verse, Romans 6:23. The wages of sin is death. Let me read you the rest of that passage. The Bible goes on to say, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. And that's what happens whenever I choose the white flag. Whenever I say, okay, I can't fix myself. I need help. I need help. I need you in my life. When it's His rules that I'm living by, it's His reward. And His reward starts with your soul, but it doesn't end there. There's more to it than that. See, we think about surrender as something shameful. When I think about the white flag, let's just be honest, okay? I'm sorry I don't think we have any international folks here. When I think about surrendering, the first thing that comes to my mind is France, World War II. Any World War II fans? Right? France, World War I, they're right in the thick of it. They're fighting, they're holding back. World War II, they're like, we give up, right? And our granddads and great-granddads had to fly over the ocean to help bail them out, right? That's what I think of when I think of surrender. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like losing. But I want you to think about it this way. This is the last thing to write down in your notes. Surrender is not a loss, it's a trade. I'm trading the heaviness of being in charge and having to fix things that I don't know how to fix, for the happiness of letting him be in charge and letting him fix the stuff that I can't. And you can pick whichever path you want. You can go whichever way you want. That's the beautiful thing about being in charge. It's your call. Some people say, well, if God's so good, why is there sin in the world? Because God gave us as humans the dignity of choice. We can choose to do things his way or not. I don't have to listen. And I can spend eternity with my back turned to God if I want to. The problem is that's not a very happy way to live. And yes, the Bible has rules. It has commands. It has best practices. But the best practices are not there to make life a series of hurdles that you have to jump over to try to make it good enough. It's saying if you do things my way, it'll go better. And see, that's the best part about serving God today. Not only does he take care of the problem of my soul, but he also gives me the good life in this life. See, Romans 14:17 says that God's kingdom isn't about eating and drinking, it's about pleasing God, about living in peace, and about true happiness. And when I do things his way, things go better for me. Not perfect. They'll never be perfect. But they do go better. And the good news, once again, is that if you're here, you get to call which option you want. You can be in charge. You can make your own way. You can tell God, thanks, no thanks. I think I want to do things the way that seems best to me. And he will absolutely let you do that. None of us get struck by lightning from heaven when we say, I don't really want you, God. Thanks, no thanks. Ultimately, you get what you want. But my question to you is, when you really stop and think about it, is that really what you want? We looked earlier at America, and I said, how's that working out for us as a society? But let me zoom in and get personal for a minute. If you're in charge of your life and God's out there somewhere, but you're not really interested in what he has to say, let me just ask, how's that working out for you? Because sure, there are moments that are fun. Being in charge is fun, and I like it. There are also moments that are deeply stressful. Because here's what I've noticed in life. None of us can produce a reason for living. None of us can produce a purpose and say, this is why I exist on the planet. This is why I get up every day. This is why my life matters and people will miss my life when I'm gone. I can't generate that for myself. I can't produce for myself the peace of knowing whenever my heart stops beating, whether that's 50 years from now or 50 seconds from now, I know what happens to me after I die. And I know that there's something good waiting for me. I can't generate that from myself. And as much as I want to be a good person, there's so much broken inside of me. Human nature is fundamentally flawed to the core. I can't make myself a better human being. And maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you've spent your life trying to be good and trying to do what's right and trying to treat people the right way. But at the end of the day, you've had those moments where you say, why am I here? What is this for? So you could try a lot of things to to plug in that hole and say, this is what life is about. This is what makes my life matter. If I can find true love, life will finally mean everything and I'll feel complete. Only a lot of people feel that way, and a lot of people find true love and they still feel incomplete. If I can have my kids around me, if I can just have family gathered around me, and every Easter we have that big Easter dinner together, I'll feel complete. But you get the family around you, and at the end of the day, something is still missing. If I could just start my own business, if I could just retire with a boat and the lakefront property, if I could just be popular, if I could just be recognized, if I could just be remembered in the history books for something, and yet none of those things ultimately fix the hole, and it's still there. And maybe you know what that feels like. Maybe something about that was what kind of drove you to come here today. And the truth is, there's only one thing that will fix that hole inside of you. It's because it's your soul that's out of balance and disconnected. For some of you, it's been a long time since high school or college, but I'll bet you remember the stress of the term paper. I mean, you hear about it the first day of class. There's going to be a 12-page study with this many references, and I know, all too well. And I don't know about you, but here's how my psyche is built. As long as that big project is unfinished, as long as that's still not done and I'm not sure how I'm going to finish it, I'm never fully, completely at rest. I might take a break, a mental break, but in the back of my mind, there's a stress because something is not finished, and I'm worried about it when it comes time to turn that paper in. And if the issue of your soul is unresolved, you're never going to be fully at rest. If where you spend eternity, if you feel like, I'm just going to try to do my best, I'm going to try to treat people right, I'm going to try not to swear too much, not to get drunk too much, not to beat my family. If you try, but you're worried, I hope I'm enough, I hope it's enough. It's hard to have happiness when that's lurking in the background. There's peace. There's peace that comes when you're reconnected with the God who made you, and nothing else will fix that. So ultimately, it is your call. You can be in charge, make your own way, and do your best to try to fix stuff. Or you can choose surrender and say, God, I can't fix this. Help. And He will, because He's good. Hey, this is Pastor Chris again. Thanks for listening. If today's talk was helpful in your spiritual life, odds are there's someone you know who could benefit from it. Take a minute right now to share it with them. And if you live in the area, come try out a service in person, because church is more fun with friends. See you next time.